ecosystems and the Internet of Everything and applications. I don't know where to start with this one, except to say that this is actually not a new concept. It's been around for a while. There's a lot of Sturm und Drang in the market right now. There's a lot of froth, people interested in it. But the reality is that this has been going on for a very long time. The company I work for right now, QNX, is a 33-year-old subsidiary of BlackBerry. Actually, it was a business but long before BlackBerry became about. And we've been doing this kind of stuff for our customers for a very long time. You know, QNX is in everything from factory automation systems to planes, trains, automobiles, medical equipment, and all those embedded systems have been connected back for a variety of reasons to back-end systems for that period of time. And my co-presenter, Ryo Koyama, who I met probably in the late 90s when I was working on another IoT initiative at Microsoft called Universal Plug and Play, and his company, iReady at the time, was connecting devices to networks. So, been going on for a big amount of time. The big thing that's happening right now is the confluence of trends in network expense, processors, and so on are leading us to be able to put sensors and processors into all kinds of places that we could never have done before. So people talk about the Internet of Everything, and how do I make this work? Oh, the forward arrow. You don't press the mouse button. Yeah. This needs to become an intelligent device, so anyway. So we see these things in all kinds of different places, and I threw this slide together for our sales folks a little while ago to explain to them what we meant by the Internet of Everything. And some great examples. That thing there, that tiny little contact lens, has a strain gauge built into it and an antenna, and it's used to measure intraocular pressure so that doctors can better diagnose glaucoma. You put a little receiver on your chest, and the data comes off your eyeball into the medical equipment. Pretty cool stuff. The baby's leg there with a what looks like a bandage on it, that's not a bandage. That's a tool for warning parents about SIDS, preventing infant deaths.
Wow. Wow.
Very cool as well. I love the one on the right. It's a bit fanciful. That's a circuit board which has been printed on your skin in order to be able to measure health signs, vital signs, and so on. This one down here, any of you got aging parents? You're going to love this one. This is a cane with a built-in GPS. You can program the directions into this. You know, grandma or grandpa can walk off down the road, and as they get to the place they need to go and make a change, go bzzz, and the arrow pops up, and it has the added benefit that if they get lost, you can find them. The one on the right is a sensor that goes into your potted plants. It connects to a back-end service which knows about thousands of different kinds of plants, and it measures humidity, it measures light levels, so you can do a better job of taking care of your green friends. And that one in the center, one of my favorites. Did you know that cows have to be pregnant in order to be able to produce milk? It makes obvious sense, but I never made that connection. So, and it turns out that there's a 6-hour window during which the farmer has to get to the cow in order to get the cow pregnant to produce the milk. That is the connected cow. This cow has a strap around its neck with a sensor that measures body heat and lets the farmer know when it's time. And the downsides, there are real downsides to this. If you don't get there in time, you lose about $500 worth of milk production between the time window that you missed and the next one. But you also have to, house and feed the animal during that period of time as well. So real economic impact to not being able to reach the cow in time. Anyway. I mentioned that there's an evolution going on in the market, and I think this is an important thing to understand, because we've been doing this, as I said, for a very long time. The machine-to-machine market is something that all the carriers are getting involved in. And it has some interesting characteristics, primarily driven by operational efficiencies at businesses, and people are wiring up sensors into systems for logistics and for all kinds of different reasons, but the primary driver behind it is being able to save money. So it's being driven by finance, it's being driven by operational folks inside the business. These solutions tend to be custom solutions. They tend to have all the problems that custom solutions have. They're brittle, they're hard to maintain. Something like 60% of deployments of these systems fail because of feature creep and improper specifications and so on. And they live behind corporate firewalls primarily because the data is regarded as a hugely sensitive asset. What's going on right now when you see the Internet of Things is the locus of control inside the organization for where these things are being developed is shifting. Product groups are getting involved, marketing teams are getting involved, and you're taking products that were formerly disconnected and you're augmenting those with data. So you see things like thermostats, consumer bands for fitness, those kinds of things all coming to the fore here. And we believe absolutely in the prediction that, that the analysts are making at this point, which is that there will be billions and billions and billions of these sensors. You know, Cisco says 50 billion endpoints by 2020. Gartner says there'll be 26 billion. But no matter what you do, there are going to be billions of these things out there. And again, I think the locus of the experience is going to shift. So these are about primarily siloed vertical customer experiences. You know, you get your fitness band and it connects back to a website, and that's what you do. But as time goes forward, business processes and individuals will have constellations of these devices around them. And the focus of the application is going to shift from the device or the website that connects to that one device to an experience that contains all of them. And there will be all kinds of uses for this data as well. So, you know, one of the things that I think about an awful lot is sort of the unintended uses of the data. We see this on a pretty constant basis. One of QNX's customers, well, a lot of QNX's customers are automotive manufacturers. And they're in the process right now of connecting those cars using our software, sensors all around inside the cars and collecting data. So we were having a conversation with one of the big three recently about shock absorber data. And you know, they're primarily interested in shock absorber data for the purposes of building better cars, looking at wear and tear. But those cars also have GPSs in them. I said, you know, you do understand that with the data that you've got, you know the location of every single pothole on the planet. In every single city, every municipality, every country, you have all that data. You could choose to monetize that in a different way. Similarly, their cars drive on all the roads. Why buy nav or buy traffic information when you've got the traffic information in the car? You could have the perfect navigation system built into the car by using the information that you get from millions of cars on a regular basis to understand where the traffic is. So lots of unintended uses of data that are coming out of this. And as we get to that point, it's going to necessitate that we take those systems from inside the corporate firewall to outside. They're going to have to become standards-based, built on a platform, and they're going to have to become very large, secure, public applications. A couple of other things that are really interesting, especially from this group's consumption, I guess. Mobile is dramatically informing these experiences, and in lots of different ways. Not just because the devices themselves that are being measured are mobile, but also because the experiences are being driven by mobile. Great example, just recently I bought, I had to, it was a gross expense, buy a new furnace and a new air conditioner for my house. And along with that came a fancy thermostat from Lennox. The Lennox thermostat is a large touch screen. It has all kinds of sensor information coming from both inside the house and outside because the furnace and the air conditioner are instrumented up the yin-yang. And it grabs weather data from the internet to show me the next 5 days worth of forecasts, and it's controllable from my phone from any location in the world if I decide that for some reason, maybe I've forgotten to turn down the air conditioner, I've gone on vacation, you know, or turn it off I should say, I can do that. So that is an experience which, even 5 years ago, when you think about those Honeywell twisty thermostats you have on your wall, completely different. And again, a different experience from what some of the other folks in the industry are also building, like Nest. So a lot of mobile is coming into these things that we're building, that we're using on a day-to-day basis. A lot of challenges here. Fragmentation is a huge one. A lot of people like to speculate about the existence of an app store for the automotive industry. I want to disabuse you of that notion. It will never happen. And the reason it will never happen is because every single automotive manufacturer regards the experience inside the car, right down to the sounds that are made and the colors on the screen that pops up in the center of that screen, as being their brand. So imagine you're an app developer, and you now have to develop software for 62, 65 different automotive makers out there. Some of them have multiple brands in them, and they all want something different, and none of them ship more than a few million units a year. What kind of a value proposition is that for you as a developer? Sucks. Chipsets, operating systems are another one. Capabilities, across the board. I mean, some systems have very tiny sensors in them. Some have very specific or very, very sophisticated processors in them. And as an app developer, you're going to have to try and span all of those. The device OEMs themselves. I mean, again, I alluded to the automotive manufacturers. They want to do this, but they're not the only ones who regard this in the same fashion. Time to revenue is another one. Embedded life cycles aren't months. We're getting really good in the automotive industry. It's down to about 3 years now. So you have to be prepared to be in there for the long haul. It's just the way it is. Even in the maker community, you see products like Tesla and others that are coming to market, and you see an awful lot of activity happening on Kickstarter. This is still, a year-long development cycle and real hard costs. It's not a bunch of people that are sitting in a back room somewhere writing code that's going to go and be delivered on a smartphone. Regulatory is another one. Let's say you want to get into the automotive space. You're going to have to conform to ISO 26262, which is the automotive safety standard. There's similar regulatory hurdles across the board in medical, in infrastructure and power generation, all of these different places. So it's not quite the same as the way that we look at it. Channels to market is another one. The only marketplaces that I'm aware of today for apps are on mobile. And that's because mobile represents such a large and uniform set of endpoints that you can touch with your applications. And the last one I put up here is the value chain. In many cases, if you're building for this market, you end up having to work with the carrier channel. You have to work with developers of different cellular pieces, all the way down through a bunch of different pieces. So it's a much more complex value chain than you might be accustomed to in the app industry. A couple of predictions. The first, I've got them in the wrong order here, but data is the new API in this marketplace. So when you start to look at constellations of devices and collecting data from those devices, you'll start to use the data to create user experiences that are independent of the devices. And the other one, of course, is that applications themselves are going to migrate into the cloud, because that's where the processing power exists. That's where you're going to be able to build applications that get around the issues of fragmentation, that get around the issues of lifecycle management. That's the only way you're going to be able to do it, in our opinion. Little note about what we're doing. We're actually building one of these platforms as a back end. I'm not going to spend a whole bunch of time on it, but we announced this just recently. It goes to beta this fall, and we believe pretty strongly in this marketplace. So, are you coming up next, Rio, or are you speaking, or I'm taking questions? You're talking. Okay. So, that is the extent of what I have. Hope that was useful. Interesting. Any questions? Yes. Really good question. The world of IoT is mostly a North American phenomenon. Roughly half of IoT installations are in Canada, the United States, and Mexico. The remaining half, maybe 40%-ish, are split between Western Europe and Asia. Asia's coming along really fast. Shenzhen is turning out to be not just the place that Foxconn manufactures iPhones, but there's a massive community of developers and VCs in there that are hacking together all kinds of hardware. So it's pretty cool what's going on there. Latin America, there have been some recent developments down there that may cause the Latin American market to take off. So for example, the Brazilian government recently authorized 4 new MVNOs to do machine-to-machine applications, and they've reduced the tariffs on data, and they've also reduced the taxes on the SIMs that are required to connect up. But it's still a very much a nascent market. Same thing's true in Africa. Yes? And you know that they'll try. Yeah, it's an issue, and it will vary from market to market. Just the same as any other regulatory issue will vary from market to market in these places. Yeah, I agree with you. So there's a couple things that are going on. The question was about how you bring all these siloed systems together. There are standards organizations that exist. So there's 1M2M. There's also the All-Scene Alliance, which is about devices that are inside the house. There's the Industrial Internet Consortium that Cisco and GE and IBM and others are driving. All of them are sort of looking at ways that they can build standards. My fear is that they will build these standards in silos again, right? Which is kind of goony. With our particular system, we've built a couple things that we hope will help with that problem. One is a filtering front end, so you can take data from a variety of different devices that may speak different data formats, and filter it and normalize it before it goes into the database, which we think is going to be at least a short-term solution to the problem of the fact that data formats for lots of different devices are not yet defined. And then the other part about it is that we built a fire hose out of it as well. So you can fire hose data from our system into, say, a Hadoop data store for analytics, or you can fire hose it to another company's cloud, and so on. Yeah. Yeah.
Are there any specific industry sectors or use cases that are driving innovation on others, like automotive versus hospital versus health?
Yeah. Specific industry sectors. So I don't have a slide here, but Gartner identified a dozen of them, and they're all in the same places that you would think. An awful lot of activity going on in energy. There's an awful lot of activity going on in healthcare, in automotive. Consumer gets a lot of attention, but isn't a very large market at this point. Where else? Smart cities are one that there's a lot of activity around. People talk about cars that can find parking spots and know when parking spots are occupied. And in Barcelona, they've actually embedded sensors in the parking spots all over the city, so that your car can drive to a place where there's parking available, and they know that there's parking available in that spot. Insurance is one that gets lots of attention. Because insurance is one that actually maps real tangible benefit to collecting the data. So usage-based insurance, where you plug a dongle into the OBD port in your car and it tracks your driving habits. You might have seen Automatic. They're not paired with an insurance company, but they'll tell you whether or not you're driving efficiently and those kinds of things. The insurance companies have taken it a step further and said, if you can prove that you drive well, then we'll drop your premiums. And interestingly enough, I wear a Fitbit, but who do you think the largest consumers of Fitbit in the world are? They're IBM and they're British Petroleum, both of whom have insurers who've told them that if they can prove that their employees are active, they'll give them better rates. So they've given away tens of thousands of these. I don't know if it's a requirement to work there, but certainly it's an option. Yeah. Yeah.
Prediction in one of your earlier slides that companies would essentially open up their data like APIs. What's the business model there? What's the incentive for doing that?
The incentive is there are new business models that you can pull out of it, right? The incentive to open up your data and share it is two things. One of them is that you don't have to actually collect the data yourself. So one of our customers, for example, is a robotic vacuum cleaner manufacturer. And they do a really good job on pet hair. I've bought so many robotic vacuum cleaners from lots of different places and sent them back because, I spend more time pulling the pet hair out of them. I have 2 Shelties than they actually do vacuuming. The problem with being a robotic vacuum that does a great job with pet hair are the pets. So in the middle of the night when this thing starts up and starts to go around, at my house anyway, my dogs would go absolutely bonkers. Nobody would sleep. And so what he wants is occupancy information. He wants that information from the security system that's in the house so that he can do a better job of customizing the vacuum cleaner's schedule to the owner's habits. Great stuff. If you can get that information from the security system, then it's pretty interesting what you can do with it. And in the model that we're proposing is one where there is a marketplace for shared data. We'll facilitate the collection of the data, and we'll facilitate a very large market that allows you to pick and choose the kind of data that you want to subscribe to. And in exchange for doing that, if there's money that gets exchanged and changes hands, we'll take a small slice of it, just like an app store or like eBay. So, yes?
Yeah, Alex, you seem to know the space really well. So can you give us an insight on what led to the high valuation of Nest?
I'll try not to be facetious. I think, first of all, I mean, I think there are a lot of companies that are being bought for inflated amounts of money at this point. But if you look at what's going on in the market, you're starting to see loci of control going to some of the big gorillas in the market, right? So Google is trying to find ways to automate the house. Nest is a company that has a very large back end associated with it and is collecting lots of interesting data. That's obviously an interesting asset for Google. And if Nest becomes pervasive, the example that I just told you about with the vacuum cleaner, then that would be a good way for that vacuum cleaner to find out your occupancy habits. You've seen the same thing going on with Apple around HealthKit and other initiatives like that. Samsung just bought SmartThings, same reason. They're all trying to find ways to dominate the ecosystem in the house. Yeah.
So, talking about the house. So right now I have a built up solution for my lights. I have a QNX kitchen appliances. I have my Samsung washer and dryer. They don't have each other.
Yep.
Now I have 20 different apps on my phone to manage each individual thing. I'm looking for this universal remote that does everything, and Revolve comes to mind. Some other folks into AI and management. What about the industry to, I took post kind of transform, they were trying to standardize something.
Yep.
Now we got like all comms, trying to, well, we're going to dominate this thing. No, we're doing life more, and we'll do our. So now, what is happening in the industry to get all these IoT devices to talk to each other, or at least have the same common language, so I can have one app that actually manages my life and my IoT life?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. From an industry perspective, each one of these different alliances are hoping that their standards are going to become the ones that control all those things. And actually, I think that there is likely not to be one standard across all different market segments. So you've got two challenges. One of them is the challenge of connectivity, and you've got to deal with everything from Wi-Fi to cellular to Zigbee to Z-Wave, sorry. I'm Canadian.
Who the hell is
anyway, and they seem to emerge at a fairly regular basis, and a fairly regular cadence as well as somebody comes up with something new. So there's that challenge, which is just the connectivity challenge, and then above that there's the data format challenge. And data formats are being, communications formats for the data are being standardized in different ways. So the All Seen Alliance has one format that they've proposed. Industrial makers are proposing something else. Our view is that the architecture that you want to have implemented is going to be best served by having a centralized data source, a hub and spoke model, if you want, because otherwise, as those huge numbers of sensors come to market, huge numbers of devices come to market, you're going to see a combinatorial explosion of the number of different ways you have to connect with all of them. And some will have the radios, some will not, some will know how to speak, some won't. So our view is that the data needs to be centralized in order to be able to do that.